Imagine diving deep beneath the seas of Japan. The sunlight fades into faint blue rays piercing the water. Suddenly, right in front of you, a massive stone structure appears. Perfectly flat terraces, straight roads, towering pillars, and something that looks eerily like a sunken pyramid. What would you think? A bizarre natural formation, or the ruins of a long-lost civilization? This is the Yonaguni Monument, often called Japan's underwater Atlantis. Accidentally discovered in 1986 by a local diver, this enormous underwater complex lies 5 to 40 meters deep off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan's southernmost point. Many believe it is the remnant of an ancient city, at least 10,000, 12,000 years old, dating back to the end of the last ice age, when sea levels were hundreds of meters lower than today. If true, Yonaguni would be the most stunning archaeological proof of a forgotten advanced civilization, a real lost civilization that predates the pyramids of Egypt and Stonehenge by millennia. Yet mainstream scientists insist it's all a trick of nature. Those razor-sharp edges, perfect 90-degree angles, nothing more than natural fracturing in sandstone. So what is the truth? Did prehistoric humans really build a megastructure underwater 12,000 years ago? Or are we just seeing what we desperately want to see, the hand of man in the work of Mother Nature? Today, we dive straight into this mystery. We'll explore every step, every crack, every theory, and try to answer the question: is Yonaguni the work of a lost civilization, or simply a mirage beneath the waves? Get ready, because what you're about to discover might completely change how you see the history of humankind. To understand why Yonaguni sends chills down the spine of every archaeologist and geologist, we have to go back, far back, to the end of the last ice age. Picture this: 20,000 years ago, the planet was locked in frozen darkness. Vast ice sheets covered Europe, North America, and huge parts of Asia. Sea levels were 120, 130 meters lower than today. What is now the East China Sea was dry land, a fertile coastal plain connecting Japan, Taiwan, and the Asian mainland. This forgotten landscape is known as the Paleolithic Land Bridge, and prehistoric humans walked across it, hunting mammoths, gathering shellfish, and building settlements near rivers that no longer exist. Then, around 12,000 years ago, the ice began to melt, catastrophically fast. Glaciers collapsed. Oceans rose. Entire coastlines vanished in centuries, sometimes decades. Civilizations that may have flourished along these shores had only two choices: migrate inland or drown. This is the exact time period the most enthusiastic supporters of Yonaguni point to. They argue the monument was built on dry land around 10,000, 12,000 years ago, during the mysterious era archaeologists call the pre-pottery Neolithic in the Near East. But almost nothing is known about East Asia at that time. Let's put that in perspective. The oldest known monumental architecture on Earth, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dates to roughly 11,600 years ago. Stonehenge? Only 5,000 years old. The Great Pyramid of Giza? A mere 4,600 years. If Yonaguni is truly man-made and 10,000 plus years old, it would rewrite every textbook on human evolution and the birth of civilization. It would prove that an advanced, seafaring culture existed in the Pacific long before we ever imagined, a real lost civilization erased by the great flood myths told around the world. The discovery itself feels like fate. In 1986, Kihachiro Aratake, a dive tour operator looking for new hammerhead shark viewing spots, stumbled upon the structure completely by accident. He described seeing what looked like the ruins of an ancient castle, flat platforms, straight walls rising 27 meters tall, staircases, and even a formation that resembles a giant human face staring up from the seabed. Word spread quickly. In the 1990s, Professor Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of the Ryukyus, began a 20-year investigation. Kimura is the most famous proponent of the man-made theory. He claims to have identified perfectly triangular cuts that could only be made by tools, a ceremonial turtle carving what appears to be a processional road circling the main structure, drainage channels and water conduits, and most shockingly, symbols resembling ancient Okinawan script. Kimura's conclusion? Yonaguni is the remnant of Mu, the Pacific equivalent of Atlantis, a continent that sank when sea levels rose at the end of the Ice Age. But here's where the scientific community draws a hard line. Mainstream archaeologists and geologists, including Robert Schoch of Boston University, famous for redating the Sphinx, argue that every single feature can be explained naturally. The rock is Miocene sandstone, laid down 20 million years ago, full of vertical and horizontal joints. When tectonic plates shift and Japan sits on one of the most active zones on Earth, the rock fractures along these pre-existing planes. The result? Flat terraces, straight cracks, and 90-degree angles that look artificial but aren't. Schoch himself dived the site in 1997 and 2001. His verdict? Highly geometric, yes. Impressively pyramid-like, yes. But 100% natural. He compares it to the Giant's Causeway in Ireland or the basalt columns of Iceland, places where nature creates architecture better than humans ever could. Yet even Schoch admits one uncomfortable fact. Some smaller details are extremely difficult to explain away. Holes that look drilled. Steps too uniform for fracturing. A possible stadium with seating rows. And most intriguingly, the entire structure is oriented perfectly to the cardinal directions, something rare in purely natural formations. So we are left in limbo. No pottery, no metal tools, no human bones have ever been found, which you would expect from a sunken city. But at the same time, no natural formation on Earth looks quite like this. This is the heart of the Yonaguni enigma. It sits exactly on the razor's edge between what geology can explain and what the human mind refuses to accept as coincidence. And that edge is where the greatest mysteries of human evolution are always found. Let's go deeper, literally and figuratively, into the structure itself. The Yonaguni Monument is not one single object. It's an interconnected maze of platforms, walls, and passages covering roughly 5 square kilometers. The centerpiece is what divers call the main terrace, or the pyramid. A colossal stepped monument 100 meters long, 60 meters wide, and rising 27 meters from the seabed. Its top is perfectly flat, like a giant stage. 5 distinct levels descend in precise 90-degree drops, each about 5 meters high. On the southern face, a clear staircase cuts straight down into the darkness. Stand on that top platform today, and you feel like you're on the roof of a lost temple. But 12,000 years ago, this would have been high on a cliff overlooking a tropical coastline. Professor Masaaki Kimura, the man who has spent more than half his life studying this place, takes us on a mental tour. "Follow me," he says in his documentaries. Here is the processional road, 2 parallel walls exactly 10 meters apart, running arrow straight for 100 meters. Here is the triumphal gate, 2 upright megaliths with a massive lintel still in place. And here, he points to a turtle-shaped rock with geometric scratches, is clear evidence of human carving. Kimura's team claims to have found more than 30 separate features that scream artificial. Circular holes bored into the rock, perfectly round, 10-20 cm in diameter, exactly the size of wooden posts for scaffolding or fencing. A star-shaped platform that looks like an ancient sundial. A 2-meter-tall human-like face carved into the cliff. Some say it resembles the Moai of Easter Island. And most bizarre of all, a submerged stadium with tiered seating rows and what appears to be an entrance tunnel. Kimura's dating method is simple but powerful. He points to the countless shellfish and coral incrustations. Above water, similar rock in the Ryukyu Islands has karst caves and stalactites, features that can only form in air. Some of those same caves are now 25 meters underwater, right next to Yonaguni. That means the entire structure was above sea level until the rapid meltwater pulses at the end of the Ice Age. Carbonate samples and sea level curves place the submersion around $10,000 11,600 years ago, exactly the same window as Plato's Atlantis and the global flood myths. Imagine it alive. A civilization, call them the people of Mu, or the Jomon precursors, or something we have no name for, quarries massive blocks using bronze, or even harder tools we haven't found yet. They drag them with elephants or oxen, both existed in Asia then, and erect a ceremonial center on the coast. Astronomers align it to the solstices. Priests climb the great staircase for rituals as the ocean glints on the horizon. Then the waters rise, faster than any generation can adapt. In a single lifetime, their sacred city becomes a reef. Survivors flee inland, carrying oral stories that echo in Japanese legends of the underwater kingdom of the dragon god Ryujin. That is the emotional power of the man-made hypothesis. It turns Yonaguni into the ultimate symbol of a lost civilization swallowed by the Ice Age's final breath. But now, let's put the emotion aside and look coldly at the evidence. Every single carving Kimura points to has been photographed and measured by skeptics. Those perfectly round holes. Marine geologists say they are the work of burrowing mollusks called lithophaga, rock-boring clams that leave cylindrical tubes exactly that size. The turtle, a natural concretion where softer rock eroded away. The face. Pareidolia, the same psychological trick that makes us see faces in clouds or on Mars. The straight walls and 90-degree angles. Sandstone in this region fractures along 3 dominant joint sets, horizontal bedding planes, and 2 vertical sets at roughly 90 degrees to each other. Tectonic stress, plus wave erosion, nature's own masonry. Robert Schoch demonstrated this live on Japanese television. He took a hammer and chisel to similar rock on land and produced flat terraces and sharp corners in minutes. Even more damning, there is zero cultural material. No pottery shards, no obsidian blades, no charcoal from fires, no human or animal bones with cut marks, nothing that every other submerged site from the same period, like the 9,000-year-old villages off Israel or India, has in abundance. And the orientation to cardinal directions. Statistically, random joint sets will align with north-south or east-west about 25% of the time. Nothing unusual. So here we stand at the crossroads. One side whispers, "This is the smoking gun of a Pacific lost civilization, older than anything we know." The other side shouts back, "You're seeing temples because you want to see temples. Nature is the greatest architect of all." But what if the truth is stranger than either camp wants to admit? So what if both sides are partly right and partly blind? Over the last decade, a third, quieter theory has started to emerge, one that refuses to choose between 100% man-made and 100% natural. Some geologists and archaeologists now suggest Yonaguni may be a natural formation that was later modified by human hands. Think about it. 12,000 years ago, sea levels were still low. The sandstone massif we see today was a dramatic coastal cliff, full of caves, flat ledges, and those convenient 90-degree joints. Early seafarers, perhaps ancestors of the Jomon culture, who were already making pottery in Japan by 14,000 Aslan BC, arrive by boat. They don't need to build an entire city from scratch. Nature has already done 90% of the work. All they have to do is enhance what's there. They quarry a few blocks, chisel steps into the existing terraces, drill post holes for wooden structures that have long rotted away, carve a giant face as a territorial marker or shrine to a sea god. A few hundred years of seasonal occupation, summer fishing camps, ritual sites, leave subtle traces that waves later magnify into the grand illusion we see today. This modified natural formation hypothesis elegantly explains everything that bothers both camps. Why there are no artifacts, wooden tools, baskets, and hearths wash away or decay in 10,000 years of salt water. Why some angles are too perfect. Nature provided the joints. Humans just clean them up. Why the site is oriented to cardinal directions. Humans chose the most dramatic natural cliff and aligned their modifications accordingly. In 2015, a Japanese-American diving expedition found small stone tools and what appear to be wedge marks on some blocks, details Kimura celebrates and Schoch dismisses as natural percussion marks from boulders tumbling in ancient storms. Then there's the uncomfortable comparison with other sites. We now know of dozens of submerged settlements from the same period, 9,500-year-old villages off Israel with stone houses and wells, the 8,000-year-old town of Atlat Yam with human graves, India's Gulf of Cambay structures, still hotly debated. If prehistoric humans could build complex settlements on coastlines that are now 40, 100 meters underwater, why is Yonaguni considered impossible? Yet the counter-argument remains brutal. If humans really worked this rock, where are the quarries, the debris fields, the thousands of broken tools we find everywhere else? The debate has turned almost religious. Masaaki Kimura, now in his 80s, still dives the site whenever weather allows. He has mapped over 500 features and insists carbon dating of algae layers on the terraces proves human activity. His critics say the samples are contaminated. Robert Schoch, meanwhile, points to brand new fractures on the monument, fresh breaks from the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, proving the rock is still fracturing today along the exact same planes. He asks, if humans carved this 12,000 years ago, why does it look like it was cut yesterday? Perhaps the deepest question isn't man-made or natural, but why we need it to be one or the other. Yonaguni forces us to confront how fragile our timeline of human evolution really is. For 150 years we've told ourselves civilization began 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. Then Göbekli Tepe pushed it back to 11,600 years. If Yonaguni, or even a small part of it, is artificial, the story shatters again. And maybe that's what scares the establishment most. Not the lack of pottery shards, but the possibility that we've missed an entire chapter of human history, one that ended not in fire, but in water. As diver and explorer, Graham Hancock wrote after visiting the site, "Standing on the main terrace, staring at those impossible steps descending into blue nothingness, I felt the same chill I once felt at the foot of the Sphinx. The chill of realizing that everything we've been taught about the past might be wrong. So here are the unanswered questions that keep scientists awake at night. Why has no comprehensive, neutral, high-resolution 3D sonar map of the entire complex ever been published? Why were Kimura's artifacts, small stone wedges, never properly carbon dated or subjected to international peer review? And most hauntingly, why do local Okinawan legends speak of an ancient Nirai Kanai, a paradise beneath the waves ruled by gods who taught human civilization? Perhaps the monument itself is the message, a boundary object between nature and culture, between what we can prove and what we can only feel. In the end, Yonaguni doesn't care what we decide. It simply waits, silent and enormous, while the currents carve new mysteries into its flanks. And every time a diver descends those perfect steps, the same thought echoes in their mind. If this is natural, nature is far more creative than we ever imagined. If this is man-made, then our ancestors were far greater than we ever dared to believe. Either way, we are humbled. Whether Yonaguni was carved by human hands, touched up by human hands, or never touched at all, one thing is undeniable. It forces us to stare into the abyss of our own ignorance. And that abyss stares back. Every time we dismiss a site like this as just natural, we quietly reassure ourselves that the timeline we teach in schools is safe. That civilization has a neat beginning around 3500 BC. That before that, our ancestors were simple hunter-gatherers with stone tools and no grand ambitions. But the earth keeps whispering otherwise. Göbekli Tepe wasn't supposed to exist. 12,000-year-old temples built by people we called primitive. The submerged cities off India and Israel weren't in the textbooks either. And now Yonaguni sits there, silent, daring us to admit that the story of human evolution might be far older, far stranger, and far more fragile than we want to believe. So what does this underwater enigma teach us today, in 2025? First, catastrophe is the norm, not the exception. The people who may have walked those terraces, if people ever did, watched their world drown in a single lifetime. Sea levels rose up to 4 meters per century during the great meltwater pulses. Entire coastlines, home to perhaps millions, vanished forever. Their libraries, their art, their DNA swallowed by the sea. We think we're different. We build coastal megacities, Tokyo, Shanghai, New York, Miami, on land that could be underwater again by 2100 or 2200 if the ice sheets collapse faster than models predict. Yonaguni is a warning written in stone. Civilizations don't always fall because of war or decadence. Sometimes they fall because the planet simply changes its mind. Second, we are terrible at imagining deep time. Stand on those steps today, and you feel the weight of 12,000 years. That's twice as long ago as the pyramids. Longer than the entire span of what we call recorded history. In that time, languages are born and die, species come and go, continents drift centimeters every year. Yet we judge what prehistoric humans were capable of through the lens of our own brief moment. We say, they couldn't have done that. They didn't have metal tools. As if ingenuity only arrived with bronze. The Jomon people of Japan were making sophisticated pottery 16,000 years ago, while Europeans were still painting caves. We keep underestimating our ancestors because admitting their greatness makes our own achievements feel smaller. Third, the search for lost civilizations is really a search for ourselves. Why do millions of people watch videos about Atlantis, Mu, or Yonaguni? Not just for entertainment. There's a quiet grief in modern life, a feeling that we've lost something sacred. that once upon a time, humans lived in harmony with the stars, the sea, the cycles of nature. And somewhere along the way, we traded wisdom for Wi-Fi. Yonaguni, real or imagined, becomes a mirror. When we argue about whether it's man-made, we're really arguing about who we believe humans are capable of being. If it's natural, we stay comfortable. If it's artificial, everything changes. And maybe that's why the debate will never end. Because resolving it would force us to grow up as a species, to accept either our own ancient greatness or our own cosmic insignificance. There's a beautiful irony here. The same ocean that might have destroyed this place is the same ocean that preserves it perfectly. No bulldozers, no looting, no urban sprawl. Just quiet, cold water keeping the question alive for whoever is brave enough to dive down and ask. So here's my challenge to you. Next time you feel overwhelmed by the present, by politics, climate anxiety, endless scrolling, remember Yonaguni. Remember that 12,000 years ago, someone may have stood exactly where you stand now, on dry land, and looked at the horizon with the same mix of wonder and fear. They didn't know their world was about to end. We don't know if ours is beginning to. But they left something behind, whether by accident or design, that still speaks. And as long as we keep listening, keep questioning, keep diving into the unknown, we remain connected to them. That, more than any artifact or carbon date, is the real gift of Yonaguni. Not proof of a lost civilization, but proof that the human story is still being written, one mystery at a time. We began this journey with a simple question beneath the waves of Japan: man-made or natural? After diving through the evidence, the debates, the hope, and the skepticism, one truth emerges clearer than any carved step or fractured joint. Yonaguni doesn't need to be Atlantis to be extraordinary. Even if every terrace, every angle, every mysterious hole is the work of tectonic forces and erosion, and most scientists believe it is, the monument still stands as one of the most breathtaking reminders of our planet's power and our own fragility. But if even a single staircase, a single post hole, a single deliberate mark was shaped by human hands 12,000 years ago, then everything changes. Then the lost civilization wasn't lost because it was primitive. It was lost because the Ice Age ended, the oceans rose, and the survivors scattered with stories instead of stones. Either answer humbles us. So here is the real question I want to leave echoing in your mind. What other Yonagunis are waiting out there, buried under jungles, locked in Antarctic ice, or sleeping beneath rising seas we still have time to save? Göbekli Tepe was dismissed as a natural hill until someone dug. The Sphinx water erosion hypothesis was laughed at for decades. History has a habit of proving the skeptics wrong, and the dreamers only half right. The story of human evolution is not a straight line from cave to condo. It's a coastline, jagged, submerged, and far longer than we've mapped. And every time we find something like Yonaguni, we're reminded, we are not the pinnacle. We are the survivors of survivors of survivors, carrying fragments of memory older than writing itself. So I'll ask you directly, in the comments below, do you believe Yonaguni is man-made, natural, or something in between? And more importantly, does it even matter? Because whether it's a temple or a trick of geology, it has done its job perfectly. It made us look deeper. It made us question. It made us feel small beneath an ancient sky. That, my friends, is the true power of ancient mysteries. If this journey moved you, shook you, or simply made you stare at the ocean a little longer next time you're at the beach, then do 3 things. Hit that like button, Let the algorithm know the past still matters. Subscribe and ring the bell, because next week we're diving into another forbidden chapter of prehistory. Tell me in the comments, what submerged mystery should we explore next? Doggerland, the Baltic Sea anomaly, or something even wilder? The ocean is keeping secrets older than humanity itself. And as long as you're here with me, we're going to keep diving until we find them. Thank you for joining me beneath the waves. This is your channel name, signing off from the edge of the unknown, until the next lost civilization calls. Music crescendos, then fades to silence over a final wide shot of the monument disappearing into blue infinity. Screen fades to black. End card. Like. Subscribe. Question everything.